Hello, everyone. Welcome to another session of Existential Side Quest. I'm Jenna, and this is my friend Kimber. We're trying a little bit of a new intro today. And today, for our 12th episode and final episode before our break, we are going to be talking about Ceres and Chiron. I can't hear you. Oh no, Kimber left. Kimber probably couldn't hear anything, so she'll be right back. For now, you can talk to me. So, Ceres and Chiron. Did anyone else notice that while we were going over Ceres for 3 or 4 weeks and then Chiron last week, that there was a lot of information that, hi, Kimber.
My bad, everyone.
She's back. How wonderful.
I was sharing the link out earlier and I just forgot to X out of it.
Oh, okay. We couldn't
so
hear
loud.
anything.
Yeah. Oh, interesting.
I wonder what it'll look like on the recording. But I was just saying that, like, I was pointing out to the audience, like, was there ever a point when we were going over Ceres for, 3 or 4 episodes and then Chiron where it started feeling like, ooh, there's some familiarity here. Maybe it's not exactly the same story, but there are pieces, touchstones, even within the energies that it's like, oh, that kind of reminds me of Chiron and Ceres.
That's a good question. Is that a question for me?
Anyone.
Oh, because I was thinking, like, okay, are there similarities? Like they both have a wound side, and are there similarities in the wound? But that's a really good question, Jenna. I think with Chiron and Ceres, I do see that they both have to deal with something that's out of their control. Just how are we responding to it? Does Ceres really turn this experience into a gift? You can heal with your Ceres, but it was still such a loss. Like almost like Chiron never had the thing, but Ceres was losing something that was in her mind hers. Her daughter.
Yeah, so like the experience of moving through the actual wound and the event that causes the wound versus just being born with the energetic memory of wound.
Yes. Because I think like that there is a theme of attachment with both, but it's this, like with Chiron, there's more of a longing for what I didn't experience. And so an attachment to like what could have been. And with Ceres, it's really this needing to attach from something.
Yeah, like Ceres has a more tangible feel to it almost. It's interesting to think about it in terms of Uranus and Chiron and the lack of tangibleness around Uranian topics. Like, Uranus isn't even concerned with the here and now. It's so future focused. How can you touch the future? Whereas Ceres and the whole idea of harvest and fertility, like that's a very kind of tangible thing, like when you're harvesting things or when you're cultivating.
That kind of brings me to another thing, though, too, with Ceres. We talked a lot when we were talking about Ceres with grief and the need for anger. And Chiron, there was no anger. There was a lot of, staying strong and in like emotional stability through the grief. And so it's just, does that mean that sometimes it's okay to not go through that anger phase?
I think with Chiron, this has been a theme for the past week. I've heard this acknowledging the pain, acknowledging the wound is the work. And I think with Chiron, it's less about experiencing that feeling of anger or the feelings that can bring the fire forward. And it is more about acknowledgement.
That's fair.
And sometimes with acknowledgement, we can get angry. Like when you realize like, hey, this is what happened to me and I didn't deserve that, or that shouldn't have happened, or people should have been watching out for me, or I should have been given a heads up, things like that we definitely can get mad about. But I agree with you. In Chiron's case, it's not a necessary part of it.
I agree.
I definitely kind of think it is with Ceres, though. Like to really honor what that entire story is, we need to feel our anger.
I think that also aligns with this mother wound or this gift of nurturing, because there's just being able to recognize and witness the inner child there that didn't get their needs met or didn't get what they want is a part of that.
It's interesting because for me, Chiron and Ceres are kind of talking about similar things in my chart, or they have some overlap with how they show up. So pulling them apart a little bit, I'm like, oh, where's Ceres in my Chiron wound?
Ooh, because I was thinking about that with because some of the charts we've looked at over the last few weeks, people have had Ceres and Chiron conjunct each other.
Yeah.
Or opposing, and so there is like a direct tie. So what are you thinking about your Chiron and Ceres?
Well, it's funny because my Chiron is conjunct my moon, and then it's also conjunct some other things. But then my south node of the moon ruler is widely, but is conjunct Ceres. So it's like they're both kind of like part of the same story, but it's not as blatant as when people have Chiron conjunct Ceres, if that makes sense, where they're like completely fused.
My Chiron and Ceres, I think they could be connected in some way. My Ceres is in the 5th house and my Chiron's in Leo, but 10th house.
Mm-hmm. What do you think about, this is weird.
Okay. I was like, where are you going? I could see your face.
So we don't have a chart of the discovery of Ceres. We do have a chart of the discovery of Chiron.
Okay.
What do you think about looking at that chart and the Ceres Chiron interaction in that chart as potentially having some wisdom to give us?
The Chiron discovery chart?
Yeah.
Looking at Ceres
in that chart, how it interacts with Chiron. Like, do you think there could be anything there?
Well, I think we should look at it. I think that could
All
be,
right.
Then I'll let you know how I feel.
I'm going to share my screen. This is a very side quest for everyone in the audience.
I also wonder, I mean, because there's not really any overlap between Ceres and Chiron in the myths.
No.
Okay.
Not at all, actually. Other than potentially both being Greek.
Okay.
I need to back some of these points off for us. I'm going to erase all of these trans-Neptunian objects. It'll be so sad for me to try to find them again.
Oh, I love that Sedna's there. Next to Chiron.
I know, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's so interesting because Sedna's playing such a huge role in Uranus's ingress, and then Uranus and Chiron having, ooh, it's so fun. I don't know why it's not letting me pull these points out, but maybe I can at least pull some of these things for us.
You can do, if you want, just could you right click and do displayed points and just do the Chiron Ceres Juno?
Oh, like asteroids? Chiron?
Yeah, there's an option.
That's a little closer, right?
That's fine.
I can pull these guys out. There we go. Oh, you're so smart, Kimber. I'm putting Sedna in, though, because she's okay. Okay, awesome.
So what do we got?
Wow. All right.
Just like highlight. So yes, we have Chiron here.
The aspects of Chiron, it's saying opposite the sun. Yes, it's a little bit wide. Quindecile Mercury, quindecile Venus, and then squaring Mars. I would like it to, because I think it's also quindecile, that black 165-degree angle. Aspected. All right, it's giving us a weak quindecile from Sedna, it looks like. That's
to Ceres.
Yeah. Okay. This little black line right there. But it is very interesting that we would consider this a rolling conjunction, all of these planets here in Scorpio, and then they're opposing. There's also this quindecile yod going on. It's opposing this Sedna Chiron conjunction. So it's telling us that like Chiron, the energy of Chiron at the discovery, Chiron's birth into our consciousness. Could we think of it that way? So in a way, it is like a natal chart, a birth chart. Chiron being conjunct Sedna, being conjunct this I always go with that nauseating discomfort, upset, rejection. Sedna's story has this Ceres kind of tone to it.
Mm-hmm.
So it is tying it in even without the direct, strong aspect between Ceres and Chiron.
Yes, I feel this chart makes me see, even with the 10th house Pluto, in this being Chiron's discovery chart, it makes me feel that there's a connection with belonging and what your purpose is with Chiron. Ceres being in the 11th house makes me think too, like around that connection to Ceres and that the connection to progress of the civilization and how Harvest was really connected to like the overall community. And so when there was loss, it was, well, if I'm not able to have this thing, then the whole community, the whole civilization is going to be impacted, versus just myself. And it's just interesting to kind of compare that with Chiron being in the 4th house.
Ooh, yeah.
And like, which is the house of self and, you know, our mind, our inner family environment. And so it's like that Chiron wound feels a little more internal, or I think like even if we don't talk about Ceres in a birth chart, I think people can resonate with it, even if it's connection to the moon, which is a personal planet, and it's above the horizon, so it feels public.
That's such a good point. Every single planet is above the horizon.
Yeah.
But then Chiron's down below the horizon, staying hidden. And the fact that Chiron's a wound that you're born with in the 4th house having to do with like your deep roots. Oh, wow.
Yeah. And I love that Ceres is in Scorpio when we were talking about the anger part of it.
Yes.
And feeling like I'm going to torch the earth. And so, it's just, and they both connect, right? Yeah, Ceres is wide, but I love that they're both kind of connecting to the 7th house moon in Cancer.
Yeah.
Through a trine and sextile.
Wow, yeah.
So it's really like working with these two wounds can support our ability to trust and to like have healthy, balanced relationships with others, whether they are in the community, with our family members, and just like, or even our peers, like our colleagues.
I love that Pluto is conjunct the North Node as well. And it's in that 10th house. So mission, it's like leaning into, incorporating, moving towards that wound. And the fact that it's in Libra, which signifies like relationship, like you were wounded by potentially someone in a relationship with you, or maybe these wounds are playing out in relationships, maybe the mirroring that goes on, or even just the experience of being triggered by another person, being activated in relationship. And that brings us to the fact that this is a Sagittarius rising. So Jupiter is the chart ruler, which is in the 7th house, the house of Libra.
I think there is a Ceres discovery chart. Do we want to compare them?
I've never heard of one. So yeah, I don't even know if there is one.
I think it's in Louise's Ceres book. I will send you here. I'm going to send you in the chat.
Okay.
And it's interesting because Ceres was, I just sent it to you, was discovered.
Oh, wow.
And it's 8:43 p.m.
8:43 p.m. Not in Pasadena. It's in Palermo, Italy. And January 1st. Wow, what an exciting year, 1801, starting with a discovery. Wow. Oh my gosh, look at her up there on the midheaven.
Oh, I know. Oh my goodness. Okay.
You will hear me roar.
Well, but look, Chiron is in the 4th house still.
Wow. And in Sagittarius.
Guys, we're being such geeks right now. Like,
people watching are probably like, okay.
That kind of just like further reinforces Chiron being this fourth house wound, which is interesting thinking about Ceres as like the mother wound.
Look at the nodes. Look at the nodes.
Okay, can you circle the nodes for everyone so everyone can see? So what we're excited about is that in these two discovery charts are when someone was able to identify in their telescope that this is something new in the sky. So that's why we're able to know the time and the location when it's discovered. But with these nodes, so the north node is the direction we're going or working towards. The south node is the upside down. Is it the upside down one? I don't know which one. Yeah, the upside down horseshoe. And so though that is like your past, like where you're like leaving and trying to move away from. So that what's really cool here is that you can see they have a reverse nodal conjunction where Ceres is going is where Chiron is healing away from, and vice versa. This is so cool.
There's a wild amount of synastry in this chart.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and what is synastry, Jenna?
Oh, synastry is when we lay charts over each other. So we have like, this is basically showing us Ceres discovery in the middle, and around it is Chiron's discovery. It's almost as if Chiron's influence on Ceres is what we're looking at. And if we flipped it, it would be the other way around. But if you look, they both have Cancer moons, which is huge.
Yeah.
Feels really huge. Then we have Saturns that are both in Leo, which feels really huge. And Ceres discovery being a 29-degree rising Leo, and then this Saturn for Chiron's discovery is at 29 degrees of Leo. That feels very potent itself. And then we look over here, and Ceres Neptune is conjunct Chiron's Mercury, and same over here, the reverse. There's a lot, yeah. This is very exciting.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Wow.
And they were both in Taurus for their discovery, right?
Yes.
So what does that say to us?
Wow. Well, Taurus is the first sign of embodiment, if we think about it that way. It's the first earth sign of the zodiac, feeling into who you actually are.
Right. And I think it's physical. And so it makes me think too, the being able to take it from that wound, it's like also allowing yourself to actually feel it. Or you can't become embodied enough to use it as a gift.
Yeah. Wow. It's like the awareness, like when people sometimes, we're talking about wounds that are deeply psychological with both Chiron as well as Ceres. Did Kimber leave?
Yes. No, I'm here.
Okay. I was like, am I talking to myself? No, just kidding. We're talking about wounds that are deeply psychological. So sometimes even out in the world, people will be like, oh, like, I feel attacked by someone. I feel attacked by this. Like, and it's easy for us to project out into the world and not really. And I'm not judging anyone that does this. I do this. Everyone does this.
Yeah, we all do.
There's no judgment there. But once you start feeling a wound in your body, once you're embodying it, it really does become your responsibility to address it. No one else is having, this chronic pain or dysfunction within a system of the body. And I feel like that's really what this is pointing to with the Taurus. Like there's some dis-ease in the body, and Taurus being such a primal instinct-based earth sign, it's like that knowing of something isn't quite right, but what is it is kind of what's presenting here as these discoveries are happening.
Yeah. Man.
Wow. This is a wild part.
The last thing I want to say is just seeing like how in Chiron's chart, Pluto's in the 10th house, and then in Ceres' chart, Pluto's in the 7th. But they're both angular. And I think it's also how like that Pluto wound can give us some insight on how are we going to be able to embody or heal. So since like that nurturing is like how, like, kind of how you're in relationship with yourself and others for Ceres. And then we see in Chiron so much around like your vocation or purpose. Just wanted to throw that out there.
Wow. Yeah. Wow. This is so wild. I feel like we could jam on this for.
I know. This is very cool.
There's no Virgo in either chart.
I was looking at that. What do you think about, would you say, we talk a lot about Chiron as in the astrology community compared to Ceres and the other asteroids. And I don't know, some of that I'm convinced is a little patriarchy situation of he's a man, so we kind of ignore the goddess asteroids. But I also just want to think about why, like, is Chiron, do we feel Chiron more deeply? Because in my experience, because my Chiron is angular, my Ceres is still strong and ties into my moon a little bit, but I resonate with my Ceres more.
I wonder if part of it is that at this point in history, like let's say 1977 to now, because we are experiencing the first conscious cycle of Chiron. I wonder if there's something about it, Chiron wounding in general, being a little bit pushed to the forefront of everyone's minds because of this first conscious engagement with its like maybe in 1801 onward for Ceres first, movement through the orbit, maybe everyone that was into astrology was really jamming on Ceres and pointing out where people's wounds were. And, as above, so below, maybe Ceres wounds were way easier to kind of see back then. We're talking 1801. All I can think of is Little House on the Prairie, and that's even like 50 years later or something. And it's still like, did they have enough food to survive? Was there, were we going to make it through the winter? Like all that kind of stuff, which is very Ceres related. It's one side of Ceres, but everyone would have at least that part of Ceres to consider in their minds. Yeah.
I could see that. And I also think too, when you were talking, I was thinking about the myths that we brought up and how Ceres is a cycle because of the seasons. And so it's like we are re-engaging with it. And Chiron, there's not as much of a cycle in the myth, but it made me think about how Chiron's orbit is slower than Ceres. Ceres moves, is it 4 year? I think it's a 4-year orbit. And then Chiron is 51. And 51 years. And so that is a huge difference too. So I think we also get to engage and feel moving Ceres on different sensitive parts so much compared to Chiron as well. And so I think it can help bring up, like, that wound can feel more, what do you call it? Not relevant, but like easier to name than a Chiron wound. So it's just very interesting because there's more literature on Chiron.
Yeah, for sure. And dedicated to just Chiron.
Yes.
Makes me think, was there literature back in 1801 that for whatever reason was kind of just lost through the centuries? Maybe not published. Yeah.
Yeah.
The missing works on Ceres.
That's so interesting.
We got to get in touch with like a psychic that can tap in.
I have another question. And we can stop sharing the screen, I think.
Okay.
But one of the things I like that you brought up that there's no Virgo in the chart, and it made me think about mentors and how both Chiron and Ceres had a mentor. Chiron had Apollo and Ceres had Hecate, and being able to support. And so I'm wondering about that, comparing that, like going through the type of mentor that you have, because I think with Chiron, I saw Apollo was there was more of a hierarchy with that mentor-mentee relationship. And with Ceres, it was more of a witness, companion, lateral mentor.
I wonder if part of that is because Hecate came on the scene when Ceres was an adult and Apollo came on the scene.
Ooh, yeah. I love that.
Yeah. I wonder if Chiron felt like he wanted his inner gold back from Apollo.
So wait, and okay, maybe I'm going on too much of a side quest, but
Nope.
you saying that I love that you're bringing up a contrasting point with the fact that Ceres experienced this loss as an adult,
Mm-hmm.
and Chiron experienced this as a infant and
Mm-hmm.
on. And what does that say about the role of anger in the way that we are dealing with something? Or
Yeah.
just the feeling of, what, sometimes I'll hear people talk about childhood wounds or traumatic experiences, but they're almost, like, we'd like to say children are resilient, but are they, or do they really have no choice to, because they're not in control of the situation, or they can't feel that they are?
Mm-hmm.
And so it's just kind of, I'd love to hear if anyone in the chat is like thinking about childhood wounds versus adulthood wounds, but which ones feel like we're more angry. But I've noticed that recently when people are kind of talking about their childhood, it's, even if they haven't necessarily confronted it, it's more like, well, that's in the past, or it's easier to kind of release
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
than, not really, is it releasing it, or is it more of just being able to accept that that's happened versus things that are happening in our adulthood?
And the whole idea of like, you don't know any different. Like Chiron never, yeah. Yeah.
Keep going. Yeah.
Chiron never knew what it was to not be wounded. There's a quote in the adoption community that actually goes with Chiron. It's called marinated, or the quote is marinated in amniotic shame instead of fluid. And Chiron definitely was marinated in amniotic shame because his mother didn't want him. The entire existence of utero was shame vibes constantly.
This makes me think, so we connect Ceres. Sorry, it's it's just, I love that you are so into Chiron and I'm so into Ceres for this conversation. And I'm just like, oh wow, like I really wasn't thinking I would see as much in common, and
Mm-hmm.
just like, as they're just different. But you saying that made me think about how Ceres is so much connected to attachment styles,
Mm-hmm.
and yet it's like there was we can call Ceres and Persephone's relationship secure attachment, even though there might have been a bit of enmeshment.
Mm-hmm.
But it was then that the attachment style kind of got interrupted. But then when you're saying that about Chiron, there wasn't a healthy attachment, but it never changed. And so it's like, like what is going on with that? Because we connect Ceres to our childhood attachment styles, or our attachment to our parent.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. There's a lot, the more I learn about Chiron, as well as just like relinquishment trauma for people who didn't grow up with their biological families, that I'm like, I wonder how much of his like actual shadow work he actually was able to do in his lifetime, because so many of the myths focus on early childhood and then move quickly into, and then he was really good at everything, and then he helped a lot of people, and part of me is like, yeah, but what about Chiron? Like, how was he actually feeling at these later ages with all these accomplishments and victory things that he did? But was he actually feeling whole? Was he actually feeling like he could connect with who he was, with his lineage, with the horse side of himself as well as the human?
When you were talking last week, it made me think a lot about um the plight of Black excellence with Chiron too, of like, it's like the need to prove yourself, but it's like at what cost, and like that stress of like, you're so great at all these things, but are we actually confronting and interrogating the why this is, like, there's this pressure to do that.
Mm-hmm.
I do want to ask around Chiron, because of your work in like the adopted community, of just with Chiron, we do see like prominent Chirons can kind of like, you see that a lot potentially in like people who've experienced fostering. Do you see any trends with Ceres?
It's interesting because what I've kind of uncovered is that when there is an interaction between Ceres and Chiron, or both are prominent, then I start to see people have more of a preoccupation with the wound, more of a preoccupation with what was
When you
missing.
see Ceres and Chiron together?
Or both of them being very strong in a chart. Like if Ceres is hiding out in a corner of an adoptee chart, when I start talking about mother and attachment styles and stuff like that, like it doesn't really bring up as much for the person as when there's an active Ceres and they're like, yes, this definitely impacted me. It impacted me really strongly. And I'm like, okay, well, we can actually see exactly where in the chart this is pulling from both places. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Can you read Jillian's?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Jill said, I think it also depends on work you've done for childhood wounds. An adult could be triggered and be that little kid all over again, not knowing why, thinking they're just overreacting to something small.
That makes me think a lot about what you just said too, because I'm thinking going back to the myth, and that's why I just want everyone to know mythology really does. So like, in whenever astrology was first like becoming a thing, it was studying the patterns of like what's going on as these planets are moving together. And so then it was just like after seeing this pattern, then they named the planets. It wasn't that the planets were named first, and they were kind of attaching the meanings of the planets to myths. So reading mythology is really great to kind of understand the story behind this planet's name or asteroid. Just want to throw that out there. But specifically Ceres, when we're talking about that adult wound, I could see that Ceres and Chiron being connected. And I love that Jillian said that, because it's making me think about how Ceres was always monitoring Persephone and she was never out of her sight. And this one time, and so sometimes I think when we've experienced a childhood wound or a Chiron situation, we heal ourselves by making sure like we're focusing on what's in our control and kind of thinking magical thinking potentially of like I'm healing, I'm able to help others, so there's a reason for this and we won't have other wounds. But then with Ceres, it's like there was, in her mind, it was like this happened because she did something wrong. And to think that it's not necessarily always a new wound, but it's kind of bringing up the fact that you are still having, like, it can bring up that Chiron wound even if it feels disconnected. What do you think?
Oh, 100%, 100%. And I also, when you were talking, I was like, I wonder because I don't really know the story of Demeter/Ceres before Persephone. And it's almost the fact that she was such a helicopter mom and like didn't want Persephone out of her sight, even though there seemingly wasn't any danger at the time. Like it was this lush, amazing place, fertile grounds, lovey-dovey. But then for Ceres to have that kind of inkling in the back of her mind, like, I have to watch Persephone. I don't want anything bad to happen. I'm almost like, was she parenting from a traumatized place?
That's what I was wondering.
Yeah. I bet she is. Yeah.
I mean, look at her siblings and her parent, like, just, because I think it's interesting because before Persephone was Persephone, that's something we didn't mention before, but Persephone's name was Cora, which comes from the Greek word maiden. So very innocent, virginal. And then she became Persephone when she was queen of the underworld and kind of transitioning away from this innocence. And so I think that that's something to really consider with Demeter. Ceres was very much focused on protecting this springtime, this innocence.
Definitely. Do you know the book, The Body Keeps the Score?
Yes.
So when it first came out, it was like groundbreaking, revolutionary. People hadn't really discussed post-traumatic stress disorder. I don't even think it was like accepted in the mental health community, not nearly to the degree it is today. But I remember as a person with childhood trauma, being a little miffed about it and being like, oh, well, now they're studying these people who literally got a clearance on their mental health to go to war. Like, and this sounds really crappy, but this was part of my journey. I was like, how lovely for these people that they were not traumatized until adulthood. Now, when they're interviewing the people who wrote The Body Keeps the Score and doing more research on it, they're like, well, why do some veterans, are they okay? And then other veterans come home and like have PTSD. And the answer was the people who have PTSD tend to have childhood trauma. And it's like, okay, so they weren't actually totally okay going to war. They were masking, they were whatever. Like there wasn't an acknowledgement of whatever that trauma was, either from them or from the staff that was, examining them. So it's interesting to think about that in terms of Ceres too, because it's like you were so traumatized, Ceres, by what happened. And I'm not trying to take away, like that is traumatic, just like war is traumatic. But for her to carry that wound so deeply and so, like grab onto it, there must have been some underlying condition there, underlying trauma, some memory, something that, was reactivated.
I could see that.
Yeah. I want to interview Chiron
I
and
know. That's how I'm like,
be like, have you worked on your wounding at all?
that is very, very interesting. I'm still letting that simmer, right?
Yeah. It's interesting because part of me is like, well, the whole point with Chiron is that the wound can never fully be healed. That we become a healer by engaging the wound, by acknowledging the wound, by tending to the wound, by doing what we can to make things a little bit better.
Yes.
But sorry, I was reading the comments in the chat.
Okay.
But it's almost as if it's like, well, Chiron, did you ever actually get to a place of peace with what happened? Like, is part of the reason why Chiron wounds, like, is part of the synchronicity between the myth and how the wounding plays out, the fact that this is a wound that takes more than one lifetime to actually address and pull through.
Right. And I think they both connect to the fact that we heal from things from different angles. Like you may have healed from it as a child, and then you go through something else. And you just that I'm still stuck on that PTSD thing, because if we think about Aquarius energy and that being tied with Chiron, like this ability to kind of distance yourself emotionally as a way to protect yourself. But when people are entering the military, it's to kind of get away from this circumstance. And, you know, there's honor with being in the military, but you don't actually know what experiencing war will feel like. And so it's imagine that this is how I'm going to heal, is by going into this situation. And then I'm now facing more things that are traumatic and kind of bringing that back up. And it makes me think about the ending of Chiron's story with this, like at the end of the day, he still had to feel that he could not, like he was wounded and in pain. Mm-hmm. And it's like, yes, you accomplished all these great things, or you did this thing, and yet this was the ending of your story.
Yeah. Yeah. And the fact that he walked with that limp from being, you know, hit with an arrow during the war, and the fact that like even the physical wound never healed. It's so symbolic about the, like, once you get wounded, it's like life doesn't really slow down. You can address your wounds as much as you can and do the best that you can, but ultimately like more is going to come. Like that's part of the human experience. It's part of being here on earth, is the fact that you have wounds and there's going to be more of them. So address them early and often.
Yeah. And the type of mentor you need can evolve or be different.
Definitely. Because, you know, I know we bring up inner gold like constantly.
Mm-hmm. Which is hilarious because that wasn't that our first or second episode?
Yeah. We planned this. It all builds on it. But when you outgrow that situation where you need your mentor to hold that gold for you and then you're ready to take it back, it's like it's part of it could be like you're ready to take back and hold it because the wounding that prevented you, maybe in some cases, that prevented you from holding that gold, you've given it some care, some nurture, some restoration. Now you're able to hold your gold. Find a different mentor that's at the next step, that's looking at their wounding from a different lens, maybe. Okay, I have this lens down. I'm now on an equal seventh house relationship with this mentor. Okay, here's the next step. Here's the next person I can go to.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I love that.
Do you think that there's a point where you need to just be your own mentor, though?
I was thinking sometimes this is ideally like we have a healthy attachment, like for Ceres, or we have this mentor, but not everyone has that. Or you might get a mentor later than you need. And so you don't have a choice at times. Like we talked, like sometimes you have to be your own Hecate or Apollo, and or seek, like it's not that the mentor is necessarily presented to you, mm-hmm. which I think does help with the way that we practice or work or integrate our Chiron or Ceres. But yeah, I think sometimes we do have to be that for ourselves.
Yeah. Or it can also look like having a mentor that's more like your god, or like a spiritual mentor, or Chiron. You could even look to Chiron to be your mentor. I highly recommend that. But there might come a time too where your mentor isn't someone that you're one-on-one with, but instead it's a text or it's a philosophy, things like that that can open up new lenses for this healing. I think community too, like even more so maybe with Ceres, having a community that you can kind of digest your experience through.
Ooh, what do you mean by digest?
Like I guess look at it through enough lenses that you're getting all of the wisdom out of what you went through. So like if Ceres was to go to a group for mothers who experienced similar
Grief.
situations, yeah, like a grief support group, and having other people with their own unique astrological charts explaining what they went through and how they healed from it, it's like, oh, I can take little pieces of wisdom from each of these people's shares. I can, try these new techniques, or even just like, oh, I love the way they framed that. That's so inspirational. Maybe I can reframe my thinking around what's going on with Persephone right now.
Ooh. I like that, because I was thinking about village too, or just your community, and more about the need to engage before you can be like a leader in it. Or is there a need to engage as like a peer before you lead?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because there's the whole like lurking in a community that
Say
people
more.
well, it definitely is easier to lurk online or when you're not in person, but there's plenty of people that go to communities or gatherings that welcome people that
Yeah.
just want to be there to observe. And
Mm. No, keep going.
well, I'm just thinking that sometimes when people observe for a long time, it can get to the point where they like can't help but step up to the plate, and it's like, I need to share. I need to tell you my truth. I finally feel like I've been here long enough that my confidence, is at a point where I got to blurt it out. And then it's almost like they finally are giving back, and they're able to kind of empty their bucket onto the table for everyone, and it's like, look at what I've gathered from you, look at what I've collected, look at what I've synthesized. And then other people can go, oh, I love these little grains of wisdom, thank you for sharing. And then they can come back and fill their bucket again.
Oh, I love that. I also like that you brought up lurking, because sometimes it's not necessarily lurking. Like I'm even thinking about Reddit and how that might be the community you have, but I think that both of these wounds can help you recognize like where there is a void for a community, even if it's just for you. But I think that's why there's so many different, like I'm even going back to the PTSD thing, but there are like resources and organizations for soldiers with PTSD, because there were times when like there weren't resources, and so there's more opportunities to find community. So it can also, like, if you had to lurk, or you couldn't have access to that, or your community or mentor was more of a text, it's like that kind of supports you in that there is a need for this in the community for others, or that you're not the only one.
I wonder too if that's why with Chiron they say people with similar wounds instead of the same wound, because like Chiron, there was no one else like him. Like the centaurs were not technically the same as him, just like humans weren't, just like horses weren't. So it's like he had to find people similar to him. There was never going to be an exact fit. Did that somehow limit his ability to heal fully because Chiron wounds are so unique?
I mean, aren't mother wounds unique too? Because, it's just, even people I know who've lost children, it's like there's different circumstances, and it's like it's never quite the same.
That's such a good point. There's
Or
somebody.
the uninvolved parent, it's like they could have been physically present, or it's just, or emotionally present but not physically there. Yeah, I think that in general, I think for both, I could see where it doesn't need to be the exact situation. And
Mm,
and that we can still be mentor, like support each other without your path or process being the exact same as mine.
mhm, mhm. No, that totally makes sense. I'm thinking about like the mothering communities when my kids were little, and it's like the home birth community. We all had a little bit different story, but at the same time, we still shared an experience. We were still sharing something that
Yeah. Okay.
ultimately was of a similar frequency.
So I guess like, yeah, Chiron, I feel like it's just the wounds around feeling othered.
Mm-hmm.
And which is funny because like othered is very unique experience in what you're othered from. So, but I feel like that would need that belonging sort of thing would
Mm-hmm.
be resonant, but there's a little bit more, I could see there being more diversity in the wounds compared to a mother nurturing wound.
Yeah. And it's funny because it's like there's only 4 attachment styles. Is that correct? But then there's like, granted, within the attachment style, there's a million different nuances and stuff like that. But it's like with Chiron wounds, I don't even feel like there's like we could group it into just 4 groups of types of
Ambiguous for sure.
I mean, I guess we could do it by element, but even within that, I'm like, how can we group this into 4?
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, but I feel like honestly, a Chiron wound in Aquarius is very different than a Chiron wound in Gemini or Libra. So,
Oh yeah.
yeah, yeah, there's a lot of nuance. Huh. It's interesting too because Jill brought up having a wound and then like being triggered as an adult, and it's interesting to think about how Chiron wounds versus Ceres wounds or Ceres expressions can show up very much become pronounced in relationship. Like people think that, oh, I got that wound all figured out. I've healed from this. I've healed from that. And then they get into a partnership and all of a sudden it's like in their face. Yeah. I could definitely see both of these wounds showing up loudly. Maybe.
Yeah. I was going to ask, like, do you see that with Chiron too?
Definitely, but 100% with Ceres, I think, because we're talking attachment. So
yeah, Ceres is always kind of a relational component.
Yeah. Whereas Chiron, like for instance, mine's in Gemini, so it can be a wounding around voice. It's like, yes, you definitely have to talk to someone to, well, one path to noticing that is to actually have a conversation. Does that have to be with someone that you're in relationship with? Not necessarily. Could that up the stakes? Of course. But with Ceres, it's like, if it's an attachment situation, you're going to feel it through the whole course of the relationship.
I could see that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess it definitely depends. It's hard for me to say, like, do all Chiron wounds connect to that? Because my Chiron wound does connect to relationships or being seen, but I think that's also connected to some of my experience of just being literally growing up biracial and just my experience with my family and just the whole, I resonate with Chiron and Aquarius energy very much, but I'm like, that comes up in my relationships, but I'd love to hear if other people see their Chiron showing up in relationships that is not in the 7th house or tied into something seemingly relationship oriented. I feel like the angular houses do feel like they're going to somehow connect to relationships.
Yeah.
And I mean, yours conjunct your moon, so
yeah. It's funny because it's like domestic life, the moon, and it's like, it's gonna come up there. Even the first house where it's like the house of I am, it's like the contrast of the other informs that house. So I love what you're saying about it showing up in relationship kind of throughout all the houses.
Yeah.
Yeah. Leaning onto some of those other planets. It's interesting that I'm just reflecting on thinking that your mentor for a Chiron wound could be something spiritual. And it's like, is it almost better if you have a hard aspect between Chiron and a spiritual placement, such as like a hard aspect between Chiron and a 12th house placement, or a hard aspect between Chiron and Neptune? Does the tension kind of imply you're doing work by engaging? Yeah.
Yes. I feel like maybe some Chiron wounds are harder to move off of.
Yeah. Yeah. When one of the things I learned early on, it's funny because I didn't even know enough to love Chiron back then, but the first person that I ever was like an astrology geek with would point out that a lot of times when Chiron is on someone's ascendant, it points to being bullied early in life. It points to someone who experienced, whether they were literally bullied in school or not, they felt bullied, whether it was from parents or something like that. So that the fact that Chiron shows up in these ways that kind of informs us of the wounding within relationship to others from a very early point in our life. Yeah, it's interesting to kind of hone in on the way that Chiron echoes forward, whereas Ceres feels a little bit less dramatic at the beginning of life, if that makes sense.
Yes. I was reading my Ceres book, and it's just because it's so much is informed by that attachment style with your parent, and it does make me think too, like maybe Ceres just feels almost like the modeling of relationships too, where maybe it's less that it's you see it through the way your parents are interacting or your relationships with your siblings, and it's just hard to really identify that this was present throughout your childhood just as much as that Chiron feeling, but you can't really articulate it until you're older.
Yeah.
Or you can see what have you picked up on from the modeling or the like from the observations and have internalized.
Definitely. Yeah, whereas Chiron feels a little bit louder early. I think Ceres can get a lot louder
Yeah.
through
Oh,
life.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I think, I want to bring up something because we talked about the orbit length with Ceres versus Chiron. And so it makes sense, like Ceres being related to nurturing, but we get this every time it returns to its natal position, the Ceres return, there's an opportunity for an elevation of the cycle of like, there's this shedding the skin. We're going to evolve how we nurture ourselves or mother others or kind of address that attachment style. People talk about the Chiron return, which happens at 51. It's the first time you've experienced it. You don't experience it every 4 years like Ceres. And it's up there with like a Pluto transit for a lot of people. And so just like the difference of, so it could be like, oh, it was loud early on. Now we've kind of like, it feels a little bit more dormant. And then what happens at that Chiron return?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, there's definitely that like extra oomph to the cycle because instead of it just being da, 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 okay,
Right.
so we got this. Kind of like Mars. Like Mars can be loud, but we're getting a return every 2 to 2.5 years. Like we're experiencing this over and over and over again. Do you see Allie's comment that her Ceres and Chiron are almost exactly opposite?
Which just makes me think about when the South Node ruler is conjunct the North Node of like that they mirror each other a lot. There's a connection.
Yeah, and that like it's interesting because we say oppositions tend to play out externally. So it's almost like if you meet someone who represents Ceres or you meet someone who represents the energy of Chiron, it almost like forces you to over express the opposite of what's going on in that situation. The energy wants to play out somehow. Yeah, so like experiences of feeling abandoned or experiences of feeling like you can't get what you need, get the nurture that you need, and then seeing that kind of reflected in other people maybe in the wounding of other people. Maybe it looks like someone that has already been through it kind of enters your life at the same time. Like maybe Chiron energy becomes almost like a mentor, external mentor for some of those Ceres wounds, even though there is a contrast there. There's going to be something different about it, but
And I think there could be an internal conflict of like, how do you nurture yourself? Is it like is it nurturing your physical body, your emotional needs and those relationships, or is it through external roles and like being able to give back? There can be this, I don't know.
Yeah. It's that same conundrum we have with Cancer, the zodiac sign Cancer, where it's like, am I going to care for myself or am I going to care for the other? Well, all these others are demanding that I care for them because I'm just so good at it. I have such a plethora of Cancer energy, but then they deplete it and there's none left for self. So that whole like, am I being selfish by using this energy on myself? Is there something admirable about not using it for myself?
I mean, that's also really interesting too, because Ceres is connected to Taurus and Scorpio, Virgo and Cancer. And all of those signs, like Taurus and Scorpio square Aquarius, which Chiron's connected to Aquarius, and then Virgo and Cancer have a quincunx thing. So there's this bit of a frustration, even though where there's like an adjustment needed with that Chiron Ceres. And when I think about that.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And it's like the adjustment that's needed isn't so that they can square off better, it's so they can partner.
Yes, it's not about winning.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like when you see somebody and you're not quite sure about them and you need to like swing your body to like, oh, who is that over there? Or like, what did they just say? It's like this adjustment needs to not be combative. It's about understanding and finding that frequency that you can both vibe at.
Yeah. I'd love to just look and follow Ceres moving Ceres conjunct my Chiron throughout the year, since it moves fast. Of just, I feel like because it moves fast and it's, you know, that nurturing is more of a practice. And we talk about how sometimes when we're the wounded healer in Chiron, that we can fall into that the wound will be healed. And I feel like Ceres won't let you forget that. And so it's like, hey, remember your Chiron wounds. And like, I just would love to look and see what was going on when Ceres was on my Chiron or other people's, of just what was going on.
I believe it was either February or early March of this year that Chiron in the sky was conjunct Ceres in the sky. And it's interesting because it was around 23 degrees of Aries, and today the sun is at 23 degrees of Aries. So it's like, we're like, I don't know. We don't plan these episodes based on.
No.
But I was like, oh, that's funny. They just met in the sky.
Okay. I kind of want to pivot.
Okay.
But because it just came into my mind and I want to hear your thoughts. And since this is our final episode for a while, Chiron is going to be entering Taurus. And since you brought up the Chiron discovery chart, Chiron was in Taurus, early degree Taurus, when it was discovered. Mm-hmm. So what do you think about that? Chiron has been in Aries for quite a while. I'm very excited because it's been on my descendant. So what do you think about Chiron in Taurus, especially because Ceres is like one of the natural rulers of Taurus energy?
Wow. Yeah. I really think that there's going to be a lot coming up on the global scale around worthiness and self-worth.
Say more, because I love that.
I'm starting to see kind of the writing on the wall now. And with so many of these outer planets ingressing into fire and air signs, like Pluto is in Aquarius, we have Neptune in Aries, we have Uranus entering Gemini very soon. And then to have like this wounding in an earth energy, in a second house affiliated earth energy, which yes, it is about resources and all the tangible things in our life, but we know Chiron is more psychological. Chiron kind of like gets in there in this almost like plutonic way, digging its kind of nails into the wound. This wound isn't just going to be around like, oh, is my house big enough? It's going to be like, am I enough? And I think that as Pluto is kind of pushing us to those, you know, those revolutionary ways of kind of interacting in the world and letting go of things that aren't serving us anymore. And Neptune is like, put your money where your mouth is. Let's go. Like, let's figure out who we are and what we believe. And Uranus is like, yep, and say it. Go ahead and say it. I think that a lot of what's going to end up happening is people are like, I can't believe I just did that. Am I even worth the opinions that I'm having? Should I even be saying this? And hopefully enough people are, you know, they've done enough work so that the things that are coming out of their mouth that they're questioning aren't actually truly hurtful or, you know, rebellious to the point of being criminal. Any of these lower archetypes of the air and fire energies that these outer planets are hitting. But I think no matter what, we will have a sense of questioning ourselves, questioning if we're enough.
I love that too because of Pluto and Aquarius, because I think that it's like questioning if we're enough, but I think healing our relationship with what creates security. And some of that's going to be authenticity or saying the thing out loud. Like, what is real peace and stability? It's not necessarily the enemy of change. And just, I think, because I'm just like, since we've moved out of Pluto and Capricorn and just, you know, some of this need to deconstruct or be radically honest about things that are going on. But I'm just even thinking about like the attachment to material security and that value. And just like, is that going to be enough for us? Is there an opportunity to heal? Because I'm also thinking about like Ceres and like just her anger and its impact on the economy in her myth.
Yeah.
Just merging them together. But
yeah, no, I love that because so for Chiron to be discovered in 1977, and we know that the 1980s were kind of considered this like economic boomish time, like everything was expanding. People were, all of these opportunities, generally in first world countries, generally for white people, yes, that disclaimer. But I think what's going to happen is we're going to enter another age of that, but there's going to be a little bit more awareness around the fact that, like, well, actually, you know, having a bigger house isn't actually making the world a better place.
Right. Or making me feel good.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's like, oh, the rat race. Like, I think that people are starting to kind of like see into the Truman Show, see into the Matrix a little bit more than they were in 1977 through the 80s. And I think that there's going to be kind of like a reckoning around like, oh, but these are the goals. This is how you become something in society. And it's going to be kind of like, well, wait a minute, this isn't actually helping me. If anything, it's touching a wound.
Which again, okay, now I have to go and look at past, like even before Chiron was discovered, like, because I think like, the last time Chiron was in Taurus before it was discovered was the 1920s.
Mm-hmm.
Then we had the Great Depression, and so that's just very, very interesting. I want to see where Pluto was there as well. But okay, yeah. On that note,
on that light note.
Sorry.
No, that was awesome. That was a great way to end. Guys, we want to tell everyone, we are taking a 6-week break. Yep, we're touring the world. That's what's happening.
Yes. we actually are. But and we have a lot of ideas for our second season, so this gives us some time to actually bring them to life, and we're very excited.
I think June 1st
is going to be our next episode.
So we will see you guys in Gemini season. We'll be ready to talk, ready to chat, and with a whole new agenda of talk.
Yep. Yes. Thank you.
Until then.
Bye.